have appeared yesterday, so their submission is in yesterday's document on page 116. Welcome.
Great, thank you.
And just trying to find your names unsuccessfully, so you might like to introduce yourselves as well.
I'm Brett Gibbons from Town Planning Group.
Thank you.
And Matt Wood, who's the Director of October Protection. Great, thank you. Well, the purpose of the submission was to request assistance from the Council for the ongoing operation of what's called the Victoria Street Safe Patrol, which is an initiative that started just this last weekend. And I'd like to firstly clarify that it is an initiative that's going to continue with or without council funding. That's quite important to get that across the line and to make that clear. It is something that licensees see as quite important. The funding element to it really would enable longevity of the project. It would help with providing resources to continue it and make sure it's all fulfilled and achieving good aims and outcomes. And also, quite importantly, it's also help with transparency in terms of if you've got council involved in the project. It does make it a lot clearer and will be a lot better outcomes again. I won't traverse what I outlined in the submission in terms of the proposal, the costs and benefits. I'll take that as read. It was suggested when we did start this project that we do apply to the council for funding. The initial projects are 6 weeks long, starting this last weekend, and that's been funded entirely by the council to date. So the whole aim is to make sure that we can continue that process on. It's an initiative that's supported by also by the police and the council and Hospitality New Zealand. And it's really an effort for the licensees to be proactive rather than reactive to issues in the area. If we can continue to make changes and improvements as things go on, we're going to get better outcomes, and that's quite important for us. The council wants obviously people to be living in the city. Again, if we can get an environment where we've got businesses coexisting with residents and putting measures in place to achieve that, that's only a positive step forward as I can see it. Thanks to our friends in the press, I thought it would be quite helpful to clarify 3 misconceptions that have just come about from the paper today. Firstly, that the bars have no security. There are 12 bars that are part of the group in Victoria Street, and together there's an expense there, annual expense of around $1 million in terms of security costs for containing people within your premise and making sure they're in a safe environment. So that's quite an important point to be clear of. One of the other misconceptions is that bars don't want to pay for street security. That's again, it's another misconception as well. This is, as I say, it's a council-supported initiative. We want to make sure that it is run well and has good longevity about it. But I think there needs to be a clear expectation and an awareness that there is going to be an overall community benefit to this that, in my opinion, will outweigh the financial costs of it, which equate to be about $1,200 a week. And those benefits will be reduced vandalism, reduced disturbances in the street, willful damage, and also in the bigger picture probably helping police out with resourcing as well. So I think in the bigger picture it does have some quite substantial benefits. And the third misconception there is that existing security should be doing the job and basically making sure people on the street are contained and a safe environment. And that's where I'll pass you over to Mr. Wood, just to outline what's happened in the last weekend. And
yeah, thanks, Brad. I think one of the misconceptions also in the press is these guys are security guards. They're not security guards. These guys' job is to advise and support people of the expectations of behaviour that we want in Victoria Street. The guys are out flyering these to people. These are the leaflets that we're handing out to people, outlining the area of the liquor ban and the expectations of their behaviour to keep Victoria Street safe. They're not security, they're VSSOs, Victoria Street Safe Operatives. It's all about education. Think of us, as you will, in a soccer context as the yellow card before the red card. We're the ones out there giving the warning. What does the yellow card do in soccer? It creates a behavioural change for the player, and it's exactly the same. We're trying to advise people, hey, this is where you're at. This is not the expectations here. We're the good guys. We're going to give you a leaflet. The next leaflet you get is going to be with $250 minimum on it if you're caught acting in this way. So we're there to support, and the overwhelming response from last weekend was of gratitude from people that they weren't aware of this. So we're there to educate people. And then if people fail to listen, if they fail to adhere to our advice, then all of our operatives are radio linked up to every single bar. We can just put a radio call out to all the bars. These people dressed in, looking like, have been non-responsive and have said they don't care. We advise you don't let them into your area to cause trouble. We're advising them to move on, go somewhere else. This behaviour is not welcome. This is what we found. These are some of the stats. We've got these reports coming in every single night, report after report after report from the guys into what they're finding. Overwhelmingly, we're finding side-loading. We're finding intoxication. This is being found in the street, not in the bars, in the street prior to people coming into the venues. Saturday, less side-loading around the areas. Obviously, it's a Saturday. People are starting earlier at home, but we're finding a huge increase here in the disorder. And this is what we're here to prevent. We've got links to the police. All our bars are hooked up. If there's an officer nearby, they can come down and assist with dealing with the disorder. And it worked on numerous occasions over the weekend. The police have an extra set of eyes and ears, well, 4 sets of eyes and ears out there helping to contain illicit behaviour. And this is what they're there to do. Their eyes and ears to support the police, their eyes and ears to support the bars, and their eyes and ears for the public as well to make sure that illicit behaviour moves on and the Victoria Street stays safe for those who want to enjoy a responsible evening out.
Yes, that's all. I'm happy for questions there.
In my previous role, I ran the ambassador program, which is pretty much what you're doing here, and I congratulate you on taking an initiative and trying to do something about it. It's great to see. The Safe City officers came in during my tenure to actually address some of the late night issues, and they came on around about sort of 4, and they went on through the night. I know a number of the inner city property owners who had apartments in the city that looked down on the street, and when they saw groups of youths, intoxicated youths, they watched the Safe City officers go and hide. This is the difference between a council-run security as opposed to a business-run security. They are quite different models.
Yes. I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on. There is a difference, and we want a difference. Safe City officers, they did serve a purpose back in the time where they were there, but using October Protection and any other trained security professionals, we're going to get a better outcome. And I think even just from the weekend scene, we already have that outcome.
One question, because at the moment, it's a transit period, especially after earthquake. It's a total environment is different from the before earthquake. So regarding to the security patrol, do you think that's appropriate if a council grant funding, a year, $62,000 for extension to 5 years, the time frame, maybe from now on, after 3 years, when the CBD has been back to the original state, that's appropriate?
Yeah, I think you're entirely right.
How do you think?
Again, no, I think that the 5-year time frame was really aimed at looking at a period where the CBD does get back up on its feet. It's hard to actually put a time frame on that. Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 10 years? But that was where the 5 years came from. If 3 years is if the CBD does achieve those the rebuild and the growth within the next 3 years, I don't think there'd be much need for to continue these types of patrols. It is a transitional step.
Are you saying that through this the research that you've done through the last night, the weekend, that the issues are from punters prior to them coming to your bar or
Yep.
bars? So these are people coming in, they're preloaded, they haven't entered your bars yet. So the issue is not from your patrons.
Yep.
So it's not patrons going from bar to bar, it's prior to actually entering any of the venues.
There's 2 aspects to it. Firstly, we've been recognising that for the last 12, 18 months that it's largely brought about by preloading. I think what Matt's shown from the data from the weekend has been is it's just really proved that. And we've got the statistics now to actually show that. That's something, as a licensee, it's very, very hard to stop someone coming to an area.
Thank you. Can I just ask you about what you do in relation to problems coming from your own patrons in terms of your of host responsibility that the bar owners along Victoria Street take towards your own patrons? Can you just explain your processes there?
There's two steps to that as well. There's containing your patrons on site and making sure that they are, one, in a safe environment and intoxication isn't on premise. There's actually a legal obligation if you have someone intoxicated on your premise, you actually have to get them off premise. So once you get them off premise, that's a different realm that's actually outside of your sphere as a licensee. Hence the reason why we want the patrols as a secondary aspect to actually control the streets as well. In terms of look at most of the bars on the street, they have security on the front gate as well, which monitors lines, people coming to the premise, so you can actually assess the intoxication prior to a person actually coming up to your premise.
Any other ways that you follow through host responsibility policies?
It's mandatory. Yes, every licensed premise has a host responsibility policy.
Does that include provision of food and that kind of thing?
Oh, certainly. No, it's you've got to have at least 4 or 5 options of food. They're very detailed host responsibility policies.
One of the major... Hold on.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. So we have a taxpayer-funded police force. So why is public drunkenness a responsibility for council?
I'd like to see more police presence in Victoria Street and city in general. I do think that's a problem. But again, you've got a city plan that wants to create a vibrant, safe city. In my view, that's the council obligation to help achieve that as well, and that's why I'm saying with licensees, we will step in and help get that environment as well, but I think we will get a better outcome if we have council support for that.
And sorry, I'm just going to jump in there. I'm Amy from Hospitality New Zealand. What we've got to remember is it's not an offence to be legal. It's not a legal offence to be drunk in a public place. So I could be as intoxicated as I wish out on the street. The police really can't deal with me because it's not an offence.
So that's my supplementary question would then be, do you think it should be an offence?
Absolutely. I think this council should look seriously at creating a bylaw whereby it is absolutely an offence to be drunk in a public place. If we could get that, you would be quite surprised at that.
And have we done any work in that space?
You'd have for the city.
Have we done any work in that space? Okay. I don't think from a bylaw. Okay. I mean, I agree with that. Yeah.
I actually distinctly recall sitting on the resource consent hearing that probably granted consent to your premises.
Correct.
And there was quite some discussion at the time of host responsibility and the licensing hours.
Yes.
The Victoria Precinct people are quite indignant about the amount of hours that you've been granted, and in fact I get phone calls regularly questioning my decision, or my participation in a decision to allow you to trade to the extent you do. So given your resource consent application, what steps are you taking now to address these issues? Because I actually support RAF over here. It's not, I can't see how we as a public entity should be funding something that's a private problem.
Yeah, well, there's 2 things there. My resource consent's nothing to do with what we're going through now, just as a first point. But as we're talking about a precinct as a whole and precinct-wide issues as a whole, not just one resource consent. Every premise is responsible for dealing with their patrons, and that's just as a host responsibility aspect that they just have to do. If you're not responsible for your patrons, you shouldn't be a licensee. Simple as that. In terms of the whether this should be funded by the council or not, again, if it's not funded by the council, it's actually probably not going to be a major issue for licensees, but we do want that the resourcing and the assistance and to help with the longevity of it. I don't think it's something the licensees should be required to do by themselves. If we have some help from the council on it, I think we're going to get a better outcome.
But if the licensed premises weren't in Victoria Street, we wouldn't be having this problem.
Yeah, but you're never going to be able to stop
you
that.
own the problem.
No, I think it's a circular argument, because then, well, if they're not in Victoria Street, where do they go? Like, you know, where do you think? That is going to go to somewhere else in town. The same problem's going to result somewhere else. Isn't it better to be proactive and actually contain the problem, address the problem now before it comes into an
It's probably
escalated
a
issue?
question I think that Raf has addressed as to whether we
Thank you. Thank you, Brett. It strikes me it's all about the environment. Do you think if we zoned for lower noise levels that would actually help?
I don't think it would have much difference at all because it's all about, well, actually, you can go back a step. Streets aren't zoned. You've got no noise levels on the street. So we're talking about an environment there where we're trying to control people on the streets.
We have zoning for noise in the city. As you'll be aware,
yes,
as a planner,
on private land, you have zoning.
we have zoning in the city, in the CBD for noise, as you're aware, as a planner.
Yes, and no, that's what I'm saying. It's you do not have zoning on a legal road. As a planner, I'm telling them, I know that for a fact. You don't have zoning on a legal road. This is a street security initiative. There are no noise limits. Noise limits are on premise.
Yeah, I just want to quickly ask about the police issue, and I appreciate the issue about drunk in a public place, and I think that's where the council's role is in this. Actually, I don't think it's a financial contribution issue. I think it's lobbying to get the law changed or adjusted accordingly. What I want to ask is, how do you find the police are when it comes to requiring their help? I'm thinking of the Summary Offences Act, for example. Surely there would be provision under that to be able to ask for some support from the police.
Yeah, I mean, on both nights when I was out with the team, the overwhelming response from the police was, thank you, you're an extra set of eyes and ears for us, and we really appreciate it. They're appreciative of the support, the information that they were getting for us, and when we showed them leaflets and talked to them about the project, if they were unaware, they were blown away by it. They really appreciate it. There is a resourcing issue, and it has been for a while. There's been not enough around. But again, what we've got to come back to is we're not policing the streets, we're giving information, we're trying to educate people. That's what our main aim is to do, is to educate, and then if people fail to listen to what we want to educate them about, the expectations, to feed on that ban to the rest of the bars so they will not get to cause trouble on Victoria Street. Away they go. Ideally, we don't want them going somewhere else. Ideally, we'd like to have the streets safe in every major street so people get the message this kind of behaviour cannot go on, and it must change.
Substantially longer than we should have allowed, and it creates a big incentive to be last.
The most controversial.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for coming in, and for everybody for their participation. And that's the end of today.